Greetings and salutations, listener. It is I, Eric J. Chucky, joined as always by the boy.
Hey!
This is the Two Nerds podcast and the culmination of things that have been here since before we started casting pods.
Yeah, pretty much. This is 22 movies, 11 years. The pop culture through line of the last decade. And it's... While the movies will continue, it's over. This is the Endgame.
Spoiler-free review.
You know what? I can do this real simple. If you care about the MCU, not necessarily if you just like the Marvel movies, or if you've seen like 2 or 3 of them and you think you'd enjoy this one. If you care about the MCU as a thing, if you've seen the MCU movies, you already were planning on seeing this movie, and I can tell you it's not going to be a mistake. This was an amazing experience. If you just saw a couple Marvel movies and liked them and think you might enjoy this, I think you're probably right, but I don't have the full context of your experience, so I can't say for sure.
I would recommend grinding on some more MCU stuff until your level is high enough to battle Endgame.
You might enjoy it just fine as it is. Honestly, I'm not you, and I'm so divorced from that you that I can't tell you if you like this movie. I can only speak from the perspective of someone who really loves the MCU, whose top 10 favorite movies at minimum contain at least 4 MCU movies to more on some days. I couldn't have asked for more out of this movie. It's not perfect. No movie's perfect. But I couldn't have reasonably asked for anything more than I got. And it was a great experience.
That concludes the spoiler-free portion of this review. Although, given the nature of spoilers in Marvel movies, why did you click on this podcast?
Well, I mean, maybe they were here for the spoiler-free review. After all, if the box office is to be believed, every human plans on seeing Endgame. So, there's a fair swath of humanity who already has done so. And they might be here for our thoughts.
I echo basically what you said. I might have said it a bit differently, but let's get a bit into the nitty-gritty, and let's open with the fact that both of us were a bit concerned.
I'm not going to say deeply concerned. I was wary going into Endgame. I
meant more that we'd be able to podcast on this behemoth.
Oh, that too. But I was. If we're starting from the beginning, I'd like to start with owning up to when I'm wrong. I like doing that. I was concerned about Endgame. It was so ambitious. It was so because they said they're basically going to they were going to provide a satisfying conclusion to 22 movies and 11 years of film in 3 hours, and that was a pretty big balls statement, and I was a little concerned, and I was wrong. They did it just fine.
I know this is usually part of our podcast in general. Let me go ahead and get it out of the way. The nitpicky, gun to my forehead, find something you don't care for about this film crap.
Yeah, I have a couple very, very minor nitpicks, and they are the most nitpicky internet dickhead I can possibly be about this movie. You are getting literally the biggest douche version of me right now. What do you got?
I still don't care about Nat, but I blame Joss Whedon for that.
He means Black Widow.
They call her Nat way more. Mind you, I didn't hate her in this movie or anything. I thought she had a really good arc.
You just don't care.
I just was not super.
Joss Whedon ruined your ability to invest in this character.
Sure.
Because she doesn't have a Russian accent.
And she never betrays anyone ever.
Which is like Black Widow's whole deal. She kind of betrays someone in that Civil War movie, kinda.
Sure. But some of the humor didn't land that flush for me. I was a little... I don't know. I mean, it was all right. It's not like it was like a big fart joke or something, but some of it I was just kind of like, eh.
By contrast, I've bitched in a couple Marvel movies at this point about sometimes you have to let an emotional moment breathe. So not everything needs to be fucking immediately have the legs cut out from under it with a joke. And Endgame didn't.
That was nice.
They let dramatic moments be dramatic. They let sad moments be sad. They also had moments of levity, but they didn't try and cut the legs off of serious moments with witty quip jokes.
Oh, I agree. And what I'm saying is specifically that some of those jokes that were there in those moments of levity, they weren't that great. I didn't laugh that hard.
Yeah, some of them were just sort of mediocre runs on stuff.
I understand. That's a humor you've done.
My most nitpicking is, while I recognize the philosophy they have decided to go with, and I admire it, you did kind of yada past a bunch of the time travel stuff, I'm going to be honest. And I respect why, because you kind of have to, because time travel makes no goddamn sense. So you kind of have to pick which version of nonsense you're going with and just sort of fucking strap in and go whole hog. But you kind of yada past it, some people, and I'm a little annoyed, but only by the very minutest amount.
Well, the thing is, and I kind of feel this way, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there was some plot hole that I glazed past because.
Oh no, they neatly closed pretty much every plot hole with the Doctor Strange thing.
Yeah, well, like the multiverse idea when it comes to time travel, pretty much it fixes it for me. Like,
it's certainly a thing. Yeah,
like
I like the many world theory as like a philosophical construct. I'm not a humongous fan of it in fiction.
I think if you're going to use it in fiction, you have to give it the proper respect. And I don't want to go too far into it because
this is absolutely nitpicking.
Yeah, well, furthermore, it detracts from the, we're talking about the film and not specifically time travel. But you shouldn't then use that as an excuse to have no character death be permanent and there's always another blur from this universe or another universe.
That's my issue with a lot of many worlds time travel stuff, is that it does the same thing that everyone being a Cylon does. It robs my ability to give a shit about character death.
Sure.
And they do like a tiny little bit of that in this movie, but only a tiny little bit. And for the most part, the really impactful deaths they let stick, and that's what matters. The tiny stuff in the background, is not as big as the big impactful deaths for this movie.
It's basically they treat a similar theory of time travel from the Deadpool movie with the exact opposite
level of seriousness.
Yeah.
And whereas in Deadpool I found it funny because it was deliberately taking the piss of shut up. This one, it bothered me because it wasn't taking the piss, and the response was still kind of shut up, don't think about it. But this is an absolute nitpick. I'm not that bothered by it in the grand scheme of things.
Like, I wasn't even all that taken back from some of the lighter moments in the first half of the film. They were just jokes I didn't super care for. The only other thing I'd complain about is that some of my pet characters didn't have more screen time. But like,
God, they only had 3 hours.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it.
No, it felt like an hour and a half. This movie is time travel, by the way. This movie is you stuck in the quantum realm, and it's 3 minutes to you and 3 hours to the rest of the world. It just blows by you, and it's great. This movie, I've seen people. I went and specifically looked before we podcasted.
How clever!
For negative reviews, for people who didn't like this movie, and why they didn't like this movie, because I couldn't understand it. Last night as we were talking, I basically said as much to you, and I wanted to make sure I was on the money with who I am as a person there, and I read some negative reviews of this movie. I've read all their critiques and all their stuff that they have to say, and No. Sorry. You're wrong. I'm sure that's your opinion. I don't think you're lying to me, but we just simply are never going to agree about some very fundamental parts of filmmaking. If you don't like this movie and you care about the MCU, because if you don't care about the MCU, I could see why the amount of what is pretty objectively fan service would begin to grate or bore. But then why are you going to see this movie? It's clearly not for you.
You know, it's one of those things that happens a lot happens, I don't know, in critique journalism, is sometimes you'll have the guy who hates X genre go experience X genre and report on it.
And he'll go, I didn't like it. Well, no shit.
Like, if you asked me to review the latest Call of Duty or Madden...
we did a podcast.
Yeah, we did, actually, if you want to go have a sample of that.
Of what it's like when a person who this isn't
Two
for...
bewildered idiots fumbling their way.
Me no understand why you would want this. It seem bad.
Kobe and LeBron, same man, yes?
But, like... And I think good on you if you try and branching out new stuff. Try and if you were branching out in superhero movies with Endgame, I have some suggestions for me what you would have done, what you should have done first.
Well, I believe in that old Stan Lee adage that every comic book is somebody's first. But like that's not movies. It shouldn't be. Like, there's those scenarios where you're at your uncle's house and everybody's being a jackass over Thanksgiving and this movie happens to be on TV and it's the third one in a series of 5. Okay, it happens. It does. But we're talking about a movie that just came out Friday. How are we timely for once? Don't.
But I do want to spend the majority of the run through of this podcast. Well, I'm not Kevin Smith, so I'm not going to use the same very rude simile. But I do want to spend the majority of the run of this podcast praising this movie because it was really fucking good.
It delivered on things that I forgot I wanted. You want to talk about it being fan service, and I think that term is a bit of a discredit. I think that term has developed a negative light inherently.
Yeah,
that
there's
is
like
not...
a negative connotation to it that I don't mean.
No.
It is in service of the fans of the thing. Why is that bad?
Well, it started out as gratuitous fan service, as the
full term, yeah.
And
this
was
not gratuitous.
No.
This is just fan service.
This was rewarding to the fans. This was appreciating the fans by giving them some good nods, good callbacks. Not all of these stories are done.
But they do, and this is something that I actually criticize comic books a lot for, but at the same time something I have an issue with that I kind of had to reflect on, is that they ended stories in the Endgame. There are heroes whose story is over. It's comic books, so never say never about the character coming back, but their story is done. They're done. Whether they died or retired, their story is over. And that's not something that happens a lot in comic books.
No.
Nobody stays dead except Uncle Ben. And not even Uncle Ben. Poor bastard, they keep resurrecting him to murder him again and again and again for origin movies. So it was a treat to get to see the end of some of these characters' stories, to see the end of what's going on, of their arc. And I have a problem with that in fiction. I have that show hole phenomenon where if something I really like is over, I get kind of melancholy. I didn't have that after Endgame. And it killed off literally 2 of my favorite fictional characters. Either by actually killing them off, or by basically ending their whole character arc and sending them off to retirement. And I'm not sad. It's right. It's what it's supposed to be. That's really, really fucking deft filmmaking, and it's so hard to do.
This entire film, and I've said this a few times, and I'm glad we had 24 hours to.
If we'd done this podcast last night, it would have been very different.
Yeah. We would have been a lot more bewildered, and there would have been a lot more just gushing and line-orama. But I still firmly believe this. This is. We're not going to see another movie of this like in our lifetimes. We might, but it's going to be by the same fucking people.
Yeah, we shall not see this. We shall not see its like again. That's not an overstatement, I don't think. Whether or not you like the movie, even if you dislike the movie, you'd have to agree that we won't see Endgame again anytime soon. At minimum, it would take another 10 fucking years.
Sure. This is the most. This was the joke about Infinity War, but this was the most ambitious crossover. This most ambitious film with all of the notes it hit. This is like 5 movies rolled into one, and I don't just mean in terms of length, but in terms of tone and plot and style, and they pulled it off. Whatever nitpicks you have, whatever decisions you don't like, in terms of filmmaking, in terms of telling a narrative story that ties in all of these threads to, if not finish the character and send them on their way, finish an arc so the character can breathe into the next arc.
Yeah, even for the characters who they don't formally end, all of them feel very much reset, very different.
This is the new normal. This is chapter 2, if you will.
And that's so good to see.
It's what I've wanted out of comic books for a long time. I get frustrated when editorial mandate or people who would like to make money, and I don't say that necessarily as a negative, go, well, we can't not have a Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, Bruce Wayne has to, and this is me talking. Bruce Wayne should be allowed to rest at some point. You should be able to move on with the story or end the story.
Honestly, I think the MCU is possibly the ideal version of telling these stories. Because you can look back, you can make edits, you can get a lot of different minds on it like you do in a comic book. But because of actors being living creatures and not images on page, they don't exist in perpetuity.
They don't. You can't run fully on comic book time, although CGI is letting us get closer and closer to that.
Some really good stuff.
But actors eventually want to do something else.
Sure.
This is maybe, we've talked a lot in vague generalities. This is maybe the first big spoiler of what we've talked about, aside from the fact that there is time travel, and I mean, come on. And I'm giving a pause here. This is a pretty major spoiler for Endgame, so if you've somehow still going and you haven't seen the movie, I'm genuinely pleading with you, please go see the movie first.
Meek likes pizza.
Meek like pizza. Second spoiler. Captain America, by the end of this movie, is done. He's an old man who had a long, happy life with Peggy, and that's right and just, and your Meek like pizza thing has completely blown the point I was making out of my fucking head.
I'm sorry. Comedy. But precisely, I think the point you were getting at is that, well, really the through line of the movie, for Cap and for Iron Man and for, everybody else, it's, you deserve to rest after a while. For Thanos, after you've done your great deeds, you should have the option to retire, to live out your days doing whatever.
Basically, I got my point back. Captain America is gone in this movie because Chris Evans wants to eat bread and do other movies.
Sure.
And that's okay, because it means that we got to see Captain America get to rest. And comics has never given me that story.
No.
In all the years that I've been following comics, I've seen Captain America die. I've seen him die as a martyr. I've seen him die as a villain. I've seen him die. I've seen him be forced out of the game and not be able to do what he wants to do. I've never seen him get to hang up the shield before.
On his terms.
On his terms, and have a life. And I'm glad I got to see that. I don't even care what the reason is.
Yeah, it was good storytelling. It was, and it's more than anything what this film did is make me excited for the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and then the expansions through Disney Plus or whatever the fuck it's called.
Yeah, I'm excited for what comes next. Not just the next Spider-Man movie, because I was always excited for that, but I'm going to be honest with you here, listener. I was very worried for the future of the MCU before Endgame. Before I went to see it, I was not in a good place regarding whether or not I'd still want to see these movies. Endgame did a lot to take care of those worries for me. I trust the custodianship of the people at the helm.
We've got some more time in this at the very least, as they Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is in the right hands anyway. So
yes, it is. Big Dave gets what he wants. That's all I'm gonna say about it.
We've spent a lot of time waxing really philosophical, and unless you had another really deep point to make.
I mean, I probably will think of one, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'd like to talk about this film in the small scale and just do a little bit of that nerd gushing.
You know what? In the spirit of fan service, yeah, fuck it, we earned it.
I was surprisingly happy to see Rescue.
Yeah, it's just, that's a thing in comics, and I wasn't expecting it because Gwyneth Paltrow has been a little rocky.
I had heard, okay, so guys, you know us. We don't watch trailers. I watch trailers even less than he does.
I was already going to go see the movie. Why would I care about the trailer?
Sure, I didn't see any of the trailers.
Me neither. I didn't see one.
I didn't keep up with the news media. Occasionally, I would get a headline on my little... if you have a mobile phone in Google, you open that up, it tells you a couple articles you might be interested in. I had seen that Gwyneth Paltrow was done with the MCU. I assumed that meant, because I didn't click the article, because I will go see the movie and we'll find out then, that she wasn't in the movie, and, obviously her character's moving on. No, I guess she just wrapped her scenes for this film, of which there are many.
Yes, she's in a fair portion of this movie, all things considered. And and Pepper has a fucking really satisfying end to her arc.
She does, and she's her acting.
There's this line she had, this one line read, which was, "Getting you to stop is perhaps one of the only failures of my career," and that's perfect Pepper Potts. That is the apotheosis of that character.
It was a phenomenal performance. I mean, every actor put in a phenomenal performance.
Josh Brolin, by the way, plays guy who is just a little too crazy to sound reasonable so well. Just right over the line. A little less crazy and he'd sound really reasonable. Just a little over the line.
I'm kind of glad
to full-on scary megalomania.
I'm kind of glad they mentioned that he killed off half of all life to show that his stupid plan was especially stupid.
Well, yeah, they don't call him the Mad Titan because he's upset.
I didn't... And this isn't just my Ultron fanboyism. It's part, but it's not just my Ultron fanboyism. I got tired of Thanos was right. Because he wasn't right. He's a fucking idiot. I'm going to kill off half of life, and then there will be more resources for everyone. No, you idiot. Life is resources.
Buddy, I like Thanos because he is obviously, from the first moment you hear him talk in anything more than vague generalities, bug fucking sane.
Yes.
He is absolutely tinfoil hat, government put radios in my teeth level crazy. But he's charismatic and powerful, so it doesn't matter.
He's also delightfully not the 90s version of crazy. He's delusional.
No, he's fucking bug fucking sane. He's not wacky.
But he's not like the Joker. He's not,
No, he's not wacky. He is a genuine portrait of someone who is powerful and charismatic and evil. And, moral relativism aside, the dude is unbelievably evil and still charismatic and fun to watch. It's fun to watch Thanos fight. It's fun to watch him wax philosophical about his absolute bugfuck philosophy. It's fun to watch him sit and pontificate like fucking the Sermon on the Mount about his absolute horse pucky.
I was really excited that Rhodey got more screen time. He felt like a real character in this movie.
And it's been a couple movies since we had that.
It has, and he always seems to get he always seems to be the joke, but in this one, War Machine kicked so much ass that I thought he was Iron Man for a second.
War Machine got to have his bona fides. War Machine got his moments.
Hawkeye, thank you for finally giving me a good Hawkeye.
Ronan, by the way, just excellent work. Man, I fucking cheered in the theater during the Ronan scene.
And honestly, the character, Clint, regardless, also, everybody in the movie called him Clint. I don't know if anyone else noticed.
No, they call him Clint. You just have weird ears.
It started with Hulk. The second one was questionable. When Hulk said it, I was like, y'all just call him Clint. Anyway.
He's very sensitive.
And they found him, and he's great. But his character is the most Hawkeye I have ever wanted.
He feels like Hawkeye.
Yes, and finally, and the acting was phenomenal.
He has this one scene right after secondary, a millionth time spoiler alert. I think I'm finally done giving them. Almost, we're done with the podcast. Right after Natasha. After they fight to see who's going to do the heroic sacrifice, which is just perfectly in character for both of them.
Yeah, as I said earlier, I don't care about Nat, but
that's just excellent. That is perfectly in character for both of them.
Yep.
And, Hawkeye, to get his family back, he will do whatever it takes to protect his friend. He will do whatever it takes. Natasha was bound and goddamn determined to do one fucking thing right. To finally clear the red from her ledger. And she got to do it. And it provides such a stark contrast to the scene with Gamora, in that just the differences in what brought them to that same end make all the difference in the world. But I'm getting off track. There's a scene where Hawkeye, right after that, Jeremy Renner looks like someone just murdered his whole family. Like, he genuinely gets that level of pure world-destroying heartache across. I can't fucking fathom how to do that.
Dude, I was watching a couple of behind-the-scenes things. I think I sent one to you, but they pan past him, and it's in that final big battle. And he's so fucking method. He's, literally crouching in a little hole, looking over the script, and his face is so fallen. He looks like he has lost everything. And everybody, fucking... too many Chris's. Captain America's all goofy
Evans.
And joking around. Everybody else is doing whatever, but he is fucking.
And it's just this. I could go on and on about the little tiny details that are amazing about this movie.
Yeah, there are lots of little attention to detail things.
One of the things I love about this movie that I wanted to highlight, because I haven't seen it much online. Someone, I think, posted something similar on Reddit. But I haven't seen a lot of it, is that most characters get a really big action set piece in this movie. They get their moment to shine. The Hulk doesn't has a moment to shine. He has a couple, but none of them are smashing. And that's great. And that sounds weird, but it's because the Hulk's character arc in this movie is that he's at peace. He's finally not angry. He finally accepted the Hulk as a part of himself and worked past his issues. And it took him a whole year to do it, but he did it. He worked past his issues. He's past it now. He's no longer angry. So, in this movie, he doesn't smash things in anger. Everything he accomplishes by talking or being smart. The few times we see him use his Hulk strength and power and durability, it's to save people or undo violence or protect others. And that is, they don't dwell on it. They just blow past this amazing fucking arc for this character. And it's just one of so many amazing arcs for all the characters in this movie.
I constantly wanted more Rocket because I love Rocket, and he wasn't as big of a feature in Guardians 2 as he was in the first one. But, like, I appreciate how, from the word go, Rocket has dealt with his issues.
Rocket is just way more well balanced, and he spends the whole movie helping to balance others. And that's, again, such good storytelling, and it's such show don't tell. Rocket, the standoffish dickhead who would shove people away, spends the whole movie. When Nebula shows up, he stops and goes to hold her hand. And that's so out of character for him. From the Rocket in the first movie, who froze at the idea of Drax giving him any affection after losing his only friend. And when Thor is losing his absolute shit in an incredibly believable way, Rocket isn't gentle about it because he's still the same guy, but he helps.
Yeah. I think Nebula, since you mentioned her, and Scott Lang have probably second tier best arcs in the film. They were probably the biggest.
Like
things
your
holding
tier
up
one
the
being
movie.
Tony and Cap.
Yeah. I feel this movie did more service to Ant-Man than either Ant-Man movies. What a fantastic... If they never make another Ant-Man movie, and I hope they do because I like them, but if they never do...
What a
good
fantastic
job.
end for that character.
Yeah, fucking great.
And honestly, I think I know why. It's because Scott was forced to work on his own. In his movie, he's the doofus.
Right.
He's the comic relief. Other people are the serious people who get shit done. But in this whole movie, all the shit that came from the Ant-Man crew, as it were, came from Scott. And he's believable in that role now, after 2 Ant-Man movies worth of experience. And it let him shine at being good at what he does. Being good at being a superhero.
We could talk about this movie forever, and we will in our own homes.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, I could probably do this same thing for everyone who wasn't unsnapped, and even a couple people who were unsnapped had great character moments. But for everyone who wasn't unsnapped, they really fucking took the time in this movie. And we didn't really cover Tony or Cap's story arcs. They're amazing fucking story arcs, basically at all. And, like, I think it's partially because I don't really know how to summarize them better than the movie does.
Yeah, basically. If you care and you haven't already watched the films, even with spoilers, because I had a couple spoilers, thus is the internet. I had spoilers before the movie even came out. But,
I had none. I was very lucky.
I tracked them magnetically. Watch it. Watch the Marvel movies if you like superheroes at all.
If you like heroes at all, if this isn't about Marvel movies, but it's still the best summary I've ever heard, and I've said it a couple times on the podcast. If the sentence, the worst thing that had ever happened was happening, and everyone was running away, and one person was running towards it, if that resonates with you, go see Endgame.
But
see the Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. Make love, not war.
Everything's better when nerds talk about it.